This is KPFT Houston, 90.1 FM and FM HD1.
Hello, Houston. Live from the KPFT studios, it's the Houston Hour with Houston historian and TV's Mr. McKenney and Heidi Vaughn of Heidi Vaughns Fine Art. Now, sit back and relax as we bring you an hour of all things arts, entertainment, history, and Houston happenings. Here's Mr. McKenney.
Hello, Houston. Well, happy New Year. This is it, folks. It's our big New Year's show. It's Mr. McKenney here with Mr. McKenney's Historic Houston and the Houston Hour radio show, joined by my awesome co-host, Heidi Vaughn of Heidi Vaughns Fine Art. Say hello, Heidi.
Happy New Year, Houston. Happy New Year, Mr. McKenney.
You know, we have had a great 2023. I can just imagine the 104 people that we've interviewed over the course of this year, 2023. Just amazing individuals. It's such a blessing to be able to bring this kind of programming to you on the KPFT Houston airwaves.
It's a great oral history of Houston.
We certainly are. We're capturing stories and capturing all this for the entertainment of the folks out there. So if you enjoy our show, make sure you like and follow our social media sites. We don't mention that often. We probably should. That you can go to The Houston Hour, TheHouston HOUR, on all platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and then on Twitter/X, it is at the HOUR1. And you should follow Heidi Vaughn Fine Art. Heidi Vaughn Fine Art. Give me your social media handles for everything.
Well, it's Heidi Vaughn Fine Art everywhere. You can find us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter, LinkedIn. Follow us wherever you're active on social media.
Yeah, that makes a big difference because you see what we do. You see what we do over here at the gallery as well, and you'll be plugged into all things arts and culture here in our city. Well, that's awesome. Well, you know what, Heidi, let us know what's going on the arts calendar.
Well, there's something really fun happening at the Continental Club on January 6th.
Ooh.
And that is the 15th annual Bowie Elvis Festival. It is a musical celebration honoring two Capricorns, David Bowie and Elvis Presley. It's kind of a slow time for, events to do. This is a great thing to do if you're all partied out from the holidays and you just want to have some fun and listen to some music and have a great time. I recommend you head over to the Continental Club.
It's always a fun time there. And always a fun time in mid-Maine, too. We had Bob Schultz on the show last year, and he was so great talking about things that are happening over at mid-Maine. What's going on the visual arts side?
Well, I recommend over at the Blaffer Art Museum on the campus of the University of Houston. There is a group show called Intimate Confession is a Project. It's a group exhibition curated by Jennifer Teets, and I think it's one of the most exciting shows I've seen at the Blaffer in a very long time.
Wow, and you've got a direct connection there, too. Remind listeners again your time at the Blaffer.
Oh, well, when I was in grad school, I worked there. The people I worked with was my dear friend Alton Dulaney, who's now curator of the Houston airports. We've been fortunate to have the director Stephen Mattisio on the Houston Hour and some artists who've exhibited there as well.
So see, folks, if you're not familiar with the Blaffer Museum on the campus of the University of Houston Central, go out there and check it out. You'll be connected to some great art here in Houston, too. So looking forward to that. Well, Heidi, we shouldn't waste any more time. We should get started with our very first guest.
Thank you, Mr. McKenney. It's a real pleasure and an honor to introduce our arts guest. Patrick Palmer is the Dean of the Glassell School of Art at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and he's a painter. We're going to be talking about all that. Patrick Palmer, welcome to the Houston Hour.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, you are not from here.
I am not.
You're from Pasadena, California. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was like Doris Day. I grew up with her,
Aww.
But not really, but it was like that. It was really fairy tale upbringing.
Beautiful.
My first 18 years, I saw every Rose Parade. We grew up just right down the street from the Wrigley Mansion.
Oh, wow.
Not because we were in a mansion, but we were just down the street. And we went to every Rose Parade for my first 18 years. It was amazing.
Are you a fan of the art car parade?
I am.
Yeah. It's a bit different.
It's a bit different. Yeah.
I love a parade. I think someone else said that, but I do too.
I do too. I think growing up with that, I grew to love them.
Yes. Well, and then I think you were very much inspired by the Pasadena Museum of Art.
I was. It was first called the Pasadena, now it's called the Norton Simon. Norton Simon and his wife bailed out the Pasadena Art Museum and gave their collection. And it is truly one of the most beautifully put together spectacular collections in the country.
I have to insert something for all our art lovers out there. I'm constantly reading about art, looking at it, but one of the most interesting books I've ever read is The Burden of Wealth. Have you read this book?
No.
It's about the Getty Museum, and I've read, I think, everything ever written about John Paul Getty. He was very fascinating to me that he left behind the most well-endowed museum in the world, and he was the richest man in the world, but interestingly, he did not have a good art collection, and his main interest was what he paid for the work. And he was frequently against Norton Simon when a work of art would come up, and if it was expensive and it wasn't a good deal, Norton bought it. And so the end result is the Getty really didn't have any one single important work of art in their museum collection at the time of John Paul Getty's death. The Norton Simon Museum, on the other hand, is considered one of the most important collections in the world. And as I tell, I'm a credentialed fine art appraiser and, of course, an art dealer. And I know who I can call if I have a work of art that's a great deal for some reason all of a sudden. And I don't blame my collectors for taking advantage of a good deal. But in the same way, I don't go to Neiman Marcus looking at the sale rack. I walk in there and I want to buy what I want to buy. If I'm fortunate to be buying some clothes from Neiman Marcus today, I want to get exactly what I want, not the thing that was half off. And I feel with art, it shouldn't be about the price.
Right. Never about the price.
So you grew up with a fabulous institution right in your backyard. And
I did.
I think I read you were really inspired by the German Expressionists.
Yes, especially Jawlensky.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
So right around the corner from the Norton Simon is a little Catholic elementary school. And so I went 1st through 8th grade there. And it was before, I'm old, so it's before.
You don't lick it.
Well, so it wasn't like a private school, real exclusive. It was a Catholic school.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do trips with buses because it would cost too much. So we would walk up to then it was the Pasadena Art, and then it became, during my stay, the Norton Simon. We'd go in and there'd be these amazing Jawlensky paintings. We have one in the Audrey Beck collection at Museum of Fine Arts, and it's these big red heads, and he painted the same woman, must have been 100 times. And so there'd be a wall of these red paintings, green hair, red skin, and this intense look. I thought that's what art was. I just thought, wow, that's neat. And to this day, I paint big heads, and I know.
Yes, you do.
I know that I'm just channeling Jawlensky.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's really great.
Yeah, he was such an amazing painter
Oh.
and storyteller.
Yeah. So at what point did you realize you were an artist?
I never thought I was not an artist, I think. When I was a kid, I wasn't into sports. I wasn't into anything. I just drew. And then one of my teachers saw that I wasn't doing well in high school. And she searched around and she found that the Otis Art Institute in L.A. did something very similar to the junior school at the Museum of Fine Arts. And they gave scholarships to juniors and seniors to draw on Saturdays. So she enrolled me in.
How nice of her. And
I know.
was that kind of far from your home?
It was an hour away from where we lived. 'Cause it
Not
was-
too bad.
Yeah, it was in downtown LA. But I was one of 6 kids. So for my father to drive me every Saturday morning for 2 years
Wow.
during the school year, it was a big deal for him to do that. And then I had a great portfolio. I was a presidential scholarship winner because of the portfolio. And
So clearly your parents were always supportive.
always, yeah. I went to Chapman for 2 years and then UC Santa Barbara and then got right into graduate school at Arizona State. So I've bragged to my students, I've been in school since I was in kindergarten.
And you've never not been.
I've
I
nev-
have one of my children is 30 and she's just wrapping up a PhD. And I tell her friends who she grew up with, she's never taken a semester off and she's still in school. But you topped that.
I
You're
have been,
still in school.
I went right from graduate school into teaching. And so I've never not been in school. I really think in semesters. I don't think in seasons,
Oh, that's interesting.
which is easy in Texas.
Yeah, because it's
Just two, yeah. And they say never stop learning, so that's
Right.
definitely something we should all.
Yeah. And so how did you end up in Houston?
I was teaching. I had a killer apartment in San Francisco. I moved there after graduate school. Rent control,
Ooh.
good job, view of the Golden Gate Bridge, the
What,
top
were,
of the
what was
Golden-
your good job?
I was teaching design and drawing at San Francisco City College.
Great.
Which is the largest city college in California. So it was a great gig and it was wonderful. Had a great apartment. It was really a fun time. And then I had a love interest that had just finished the law school but needed to go back to take the bar. And so the story was, we'll just go back, we'll take the bar, and then we'll come back. Yeah, that, of course, never was going to happen. And that didn't last so long, but I completely fell in love with Houston. I love Houston.
What was about it that you were drawn to?
So I've lived in lots of big cities. galleries, and it is the first city that I've been in where everyone is inward. In San Francisco or LA, even New York, they're looking at Paris, they're looking at LA, they're looking at everywhere else, but they're not buying San Francisco art or the people that live there.
Right.
And there's so many collectors in Houston that actively go for art, and they go for Houston.
Patrick, can I tell you about my collection? It's a Houston art collection. And I represent Houston artists.
I love Houston.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think if our institutions don't purchase and display works by our local artists, how could we possibly be known as having a Houston art scene or a Houston art look? It's vital. And our patrons, it breaks my heart when I think it'd be really cool. I'd love to fly to Basel, Switzerland and buy a work of art and pay to ship it back, but I'm not in the position to do so. But why not just buy here? We've got great stuff here.
I know. I'm always lobbying for one small gallery in one of the 3 huge museums that we have to be dedicated to Houston art.
I think that's a great idea.
I know.
I think my collection is, well, I guess I call it a Texas collection, but it's almost a Houston collection exclusively, but I don't have any paintings of bluebonnets or anything like that. And I know the artists in my collection, with pretty much one exception. I have a really fine Luis Jimenez I bought from Gus Capriva. I did not have the opportunity to meet him while he was alive, but the rest of my collection is not only artists that are living and working in Houston, they happen to be my friends. And you just have a totally different experience with your collection when you know the artists who made the work.
I know. Yeah. I agree. I collect Houston artists too. I have a Luis Jimenez from Betty.
Oh, she's got some good ones.
I know.
And I admire her so much.
I know. She's a jewel.
We have a number of wonderful dealers in Houston. So how did you end up at the Glassell School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston?
So I was showing right across the hallway here.
Oh, at Ronnie McMurtry's gallery.
No, it was upstairs. It was with Clint Wilhauer at...
Oh, wow.
And I had been here a couple years, and I said, I need to get in the community. If you don't go to school in Texas, back in the 80s, you can't teach in Texas. There was a rule.
Yeah.
And he goes, go to Glassell. And I was so stupid. I was like, what's Glassell? And he said, oh my God, okay, they're having their big gala this weekend. Take one of these pieces and take it over there and see, I guess it was Joe Havel, take it there and say, Clint says this needs to be in the show.
Oh, excellent.
And
excellent.
So I
That's
did
all
that.
it took.
My foot was in that door. And then I still couldn't teach there. So I asked my friend Arthur Turner, I said, how do I do this? And he said, give me your resume. So he took my resume, and I got my first little 7-session workshop was investigations in charcoal drawing. So fascinating.
Yeah.
But my foot was in the door.
Yeah.
And then
what year was that?
That was in 1991. So I've been there 33 years now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
And it's such a great school.
Well, talk about the school. So who gets to go there?
Anybody, they think it's a big mystery because no one knows that crazy building is a school. It looks like a bank or something. I don't know.
Well, that's the new building.
What about talk about the old building too?
Oh, yeah.
Because that was kind of cool.
The old building was...
I liked it.
These buildings are next to the Sculpture Park at the Museum of Fine Arts and across the street from kind of the Young Center and the Contemporary Art Museum.
Yeah,
so
right there.
Situating everyone there with which building we're talking about.
Yeah. It's the one that looks like a wedge. And the slanted part of the wedge is really a nationally famous junior school that does K through 18-year-olds. And people come all over the country to study that program because it's so famous. But we're in the square part of that building.
And you can walk on that wedge.
You can walk on the wedge.
Go all the way up to the top.
And it's a great lookout point. There's benches up there. You can picnic up there.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
It's a very cool building.
And here we are in this $45 million school, and we're a nonprofit continuing ed program. The school was started in the late 20s by a group of women in the basement of the law building, and they decided right before the Depression that we needed a art school. There was no art taught in Houston, and a group of women band together and started it. So we're in 4 years, we're going to have our 100th anniversary.
And fun fact do you know about the first works of art in the Museum of Fine Arts collection?
No.
I wrote about this in my graduate school thesis. The first works of art purchased by those women were replicas of of some of the famous works of art from around the world, because most people didn't have the luxury of being able to take the grand tour. So one of the first works of art that was purchased by the Museum of Fine Arts, before there was even a place to display it, was the Venus de Milo replica. And they put that in San Jacinto High School. And the parents of San Jacinto High School went nuts because it was this bare-breasted woman in a high school. And it was like, what? And so they removed it. And Mr. McKinney, you have to tell our listeners, where is that sculpture now?
Well, it's in a very famous place. The 1926 Julia Idison Library is now, but actually the 1904 Carnegie Library is where it likely was moved to at the time period. There's great photos of it inside that space as well. And as Heidi mentions, women take photos.
Oh, you can look now and see
weddings.
brides posed in front of it. Now it's still in the library at the Julia Idison Library.
Does the museum still own it?
I don't.
They gave it.
Okay.
They gave it away to the city. Well, no, they would have given it away.
I
The
don't
museum would have
remember.
donated it to San Jacinto High School, and then they would have then said, we don't want it, get it out of here, and they gave it to. So it all kind of stayed within government entities.
Right.
But I believe that's the custody of change. So I guess legally, the city of Houston owns it. The Houston Public Library System owns
What
it.
a beautiful home for it.
What a great
now.
gift.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She holds court there. So
Yeah.
So back to the Glassell. So when you started, you were in the original building, which was actually made out of glass tiles.
It was the sixth building.
Oh, that was the sixth building.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
they were all over the place.
Okay.
In the sixth building, which went up 77,
77,
I think.
yeah. I think it's late 70s for
Yeah.
sure.
And it was
79. It was
79.
when it was the Glassell Alfred.
When they opened it, yeah.
When they opened
Alfred
it.
Glassell
79,
Jr.
It opened before the sculpture garden opened.
Okay.
85, yeah.
And then when the Noguchi Sculpture Garden came, that was at the front porch of the Glassell School. And that was really a terrific building. Every time it rained, we had to put buckets out and all that. But it was a wonderful building. But the only way they could figure out how to build the new Kinder building was to
Change the footprint and everything.
Yeah.
It happens. Well, there was a hospital where the administrative building is now across the street.
Right.
The Ashcroft Hospital, which is the old Masterson Mansion back in the day. Yeah, this is the 1930s.
Yeah.
20s.
So, and I was saying in the green room earlier, when I was in graduate school, my thesis was on art education in Houston at mid-century. And it was the Mastersons who gave them money to fund those exhibitions back in the 1950s. And they put them on with some of the most important leaders in the community, including the de Menils and architects and Cy Morris, and doing the curation and stuff. So pretty amazing. And while you've been teaching all these years at the Glassell, which I guess is now for 30 years, you also have continued to be a practicing painter yourself.
Right.
And I think you're in 15 museums. I know you're in 6 real important collections. Of course, the Museum of Fine Arts. You're in the Met, the
Right.
Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Can you talk a little bit about your work?
Yeah, I paint heads. I paint big heads. So when I was in undergraduate school at Santa Barbara, I was attracted to heads, I think a lot because of the Norton Simon collection again. And then I got into graduate school, and they gave me a full ride, and it was this great deal. And when I got there, they said, oh, we don't do figurative art in our grad program. I thought, this is 1977. How do you not do figurative art? So I had to I used the same rules for figure, but I did these architectural drawings
Ooh.
of imagined buildings. So you didn't know how big they were, where they were, who built them, or what they were for. I called them imagined monuments, but they were just kind of my figures. But
In your color palette?
yeah, in the same palette and everything. And it happened that when I graduated in 79, the banks and oil companies were a big boom in California. And so, I was getting used to that whole starving artist thing coming up after graduate school. And I moved to San Francisco. And within a year, I was in New York and Chicago.
Holy cow.
Everybody wanted those weird these imagined monuments because they looked great in offices, I think.
This was just all meant to be.
And so I was like, this is fun.
It sounds like things happened easily for you, did they?
It did.
Wow.
I really was the Doris Day kid from the 50s.
That's beautiful.
I know. There's a but in there.
Okay.
But it was all wonderful. And then I moved to Houston and thinking that, I'm going to get the job. I was nothing. No one had ever said no. And then I moved right before Houston crashes in 1987, 88.
86, 87, the Boston Savings and Loan scandal. Yeah, it was a big deal. Here you are.
Unemployed. No one's buying art. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And a good friend of mine was head of the art department at, of all places, Mississippi State in Starkville, Mississippi. So she said, come and be a guest lecturer. And so from Santa Barbara and Newport Beach and all that
Wow.
to Starkville, Mississippi. But I kept teaching, and then I came back here, and Clint got me my foot in the door at Glisel, and then they couldn't get rid of me.
Oh, it all sounds really good, and I feel like we should take a minute to talk about Alfred C. Glisel Jr.
The saint.
Yeah, so he was an oil and gas entrepreneur. I know when I researched him before, he was really a big sport fisherman, and there's a whole bunch of websites just on that. But he was a major, major art collector and art patron, and some of his collecting was Asian, pre-Columbian, African, and lots of gold.
Yeah.
So there's wonderful gold works of art you can always see at the Museum of Fine Arts from his collection.
There's so interestingly enough, in the early 90s, right after I got there, they were redoing the whole gold collection in the law building. And what was Frances Marzio was doing that, and she asked the then director if anyone could illustrate those bits of gold. He said, Petra can draw. So I went over there, and I had to do a whole security thing to be in there. We went down to the vaults, and they had these enormous, the biggest flat files you ever saw. So I'm down in the dungeons of the law building.
This is a great story.
It's so great. And Frances Marzio, who was one of the classiest ladies you've ever met, she's with me. We're by ourselves. We're in this dungeon. She sits down. She pulls up these two roller chairs. We both sit down. She pulls out these giant flat files full of gold.
Wow.
Full of gold. And she says, I like that one, and I like that one. So for a couple years, every 2 weeks, I'd go down and she'd pick out 4 or 5 pieces.
How wonderful.
Yeah. She had the best stories about the Glisel family. It was enchanting.
And you illustrated the collection.
Yeah, they have updated it many times since then, but they wanted little stipple drawings so that people would know which piece of gold they were studying in the cases.
Oh, how amazing.
It was so fun.
Well, that's got to be such a valuable collection.
Yeah. And now Alfred Glisel III is on our big board at the school.
Wonderful.
Nicest guy in the world. God,
wonderful.
That family is just amazing.
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, so you have something that's coming up later in January 2024. What is that?
This is the second year we're hosting. Our new director, who was a provost at the Art Institute in Chicago, I think 10 years ago, ran into someone that was starting this program that was using art as a healing tool for vets that have that PTSD syndrome. It was hard for them to function in society. And so they started having ceramic lessons and drawing lessons. In 1994, I started the program at the Art League of Houston called The Healing Power of Art. And it was art classes for men and women with AIDS. So I did that for 11 years. Every Friday we would have healing classes.
How nice.
So it was a natural thing to continue this. Joe Havel brought that to the Glisel School, and now we're doing art classes every January.
With creative vets.
With vets from all the wars that feel like they would be interested in the healing power of art.
Art has a wonderful power to heal.
Yeah.
But that group is called, I think you said it was from Memphis. It's Creative Vets. Yeah.
And they're coming back this January, and they're going to be working, half the group is going to be working in clay.
Like our dear friend Susan Budge, who also taught at the Glisel.
Yeah.
She's an artist who shows with us.
One of my heroes.
Me too.
She's so great.
Me too.
And then we're going to be going upstairs to the third floor, and Amy Blakemore, who shows at Inman, is going to be talking about photography and giving them all cameras, and so they can start trying to talk about their own narratives through film.
And this will all culminate in an exhibition?
Right. I think it's in the late teens of January at the school in the ground floor gallery.
It's a beautiful gallery space.
The Levant. So they're going to have a show there, and there's an opening. It's open to the public. It's free. It's great.
Let's check out your website for that, right?
Yes.
Let's just on the website real quick.
Yeah, the website is, if you just go to www.mfah.org and then go over to Learning and scroll down to the Glisel School and then the Studio School, you'll see it'll be on that site.
Shout out to the Glisel Student Sale, one of the greatest art buying opportunities in Houston.
It starts the second weekend of December, and it's amazing. They sold over $400,000 $75% goes to the students. That's how they pay their tuition and buy their supplies. And then the other 25% goes to student scholarships.
Wonderful.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
You can buy the best art.
You can buy the best art.
It's cheap and it's beautiful and it's fun. It's really fun.
And support them now. Get them now. Yeah, while they're still emerging.
Yeah.
Well, let people know where they can get a hold of you, Patrick, your email address or your website or your social media sites. Where can they get a hold of you if they want more information?
I'm on Instagram under Patrick Michael Palmer, but the easiest way is ppalmer@mfah.org.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us on the Houston Hour, for helping us to close out 2023. You're our last arts guest, and we couldn't think of a better way to close it out. Well, Houstonians, we're going to break for some messages and come back with more of the Houston Hour on 90.1 KPFT.
Houston means that I'm one day closer to you. Oh, honey, Houston means the last day of the tour and we're through. Well, honey, you and God in heaven above know I love what I do. For a living I do. Oh, but Houston means that I'm one day closer to you. Yeah, singing at the world's biggest rodeo show was a great time for me and the guys. Oh, but when I'm away from you, honey, time always never flies. And sleeping all alone in that holiday hotel show makes a cowboy blue. But here I am in Houston and I'm one day closer to you. Houston means that I'm one day closer to you. Oh, honey, Houston means the last day of the tour we're through. Well, honey, you and God in heaven above know I love what I do. For a living I do. Oh, but Houston means that I'm one day closer to you.
I am Vivian Schutte with the Brookwood community, where our citizens are changing the way the world thinks about adults with disabilities. They would like to invite you to come see how, through our 5-star cafe, through the plants that they grow, and through the products that they make. You will be amazed. Visit our website at www.brookwoodcommunity.org and come be inspired.
Hey Houston, how are you? It's Mr. McKinney reminding you about supporting KPFT, supporting our radio station here, which is your community radio station, and your support makes a big difference. You can donate in several different levels. We recommend the $25 level because that makes you a member of KPFT, where you get all the great information sent to you via email or connected to all of our social media sites. So make sure you join, become a member of KPFT. You love the programming of the Houston Hour, and we appreciate it. So when you get a chance, make sure you go to kpft.org, make a donation at any amount. There's different gifts, there's different levels. Mention that you heard us on the Houston Hour. Make the gift in honor of the Houston Hour with Mr. McKinney and Heidi Vaughn. It really helps to showcase that this radio station matters and this programming that you're listening to right now makes a big difference. So once again, go to kpft.org, hit the donation button, and make a donation an amount that makes a difference. Whatever you can spare means a lot to us. We do appreciate it. kpft.org. Thanks, Houston.
Hi, Houston. This is Christy Nelson, artist and author of Masked Heroes, a tribute to the frontline workers of the COVID-19 pandemic. You can find my book on Amazon.com as well as BookBaby at their bookshop at bookbaby.com. A portion of the proceeds of my book do go to the Brave of Heart Fund, which is a fund that supports the families of the loved ones from healthcare that lost their lives to COVID-19. You can check out my Instagram at Tribute to Heroes and my website at tributetoheroes.net. Thank you for all of your support, Houston.
Hello, Houston. This is Hillary Hart, Executive Director at Theater Under the Stars, and you're listening to The Houston Hour on 90.1 KPFT.
Hello, Houston. This is Minette Basil, president of the Heritage Society in downtown Houston in Sam Houston Park. And we want to invite you to come and visit our wonderful campus. 20 acres and 10 historic structures, all telling about the history of our city. Dating from the 1840s, we have the oldest standing home on its original site in the city of Houston, all the way up to the early 1900s. We have the Reverend Jack Yates House from Freedmanstown. We are emblematic of all of history, charting into our future. Come visit us and go to www.heritagesociety.org. Have a great day, Houston.
You're listening to the Houston Hour on 90.1 FM KPFT, a Pacifica radio station. And now, back to the show.
And we're back from break. Well, Heidi, I'm excited. Every time we have a native Houstonian on the show, I get real excited. And he is somebody who has just been such a great connector, actually. He'll probably tell you how we met. And he's just been someone who's been really great to be able to be an advocate for the Houston History Bus and, of course, Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston. I'm talking about native Houstonian, hails from Garden Oaks back in the day. He's a realtor now, but 41 years plus experience in IT outsourcing. I'm talking about Lary Barton. Welcome to the Houston Hour.
Thank you for having me.
I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I can tell already.
It already has been.
It's going to be great. We were chatting in the green room earlier, and you just have all these great stories, some of which we can't tell on the air, and many of which we can and will. Well, Lary, tell people, what was it like growing up here? So what hospital were you born at? Let's start from the very beginning.
Boy, that is the very beginning.
St. Luke's.
There you go.
St. Luke's, yes.
In the medical center. The original hospital is no longer there, but it had these really great streamlined, modern-type architecture features on it as well, and it's no more, but that's a pretty cool hospital. And then your parents take you where?
To Garden Oaks. We moved into the house at 1035 Gardenia when I was 6 months old. So we lived in Oak Forest on Chantilly until I was 6 months old, and we moved in the house on Gardenia.
And it's a pretty new neighborhood, 1938, one of our very first suburban neighborhoods, if you will, back in 38. Not everybody had a car back then, but the ones that did would drive way out there to Garden Oaks. And, of course, Oak Forest a little bit later on with the post-World War II boom. So what was it like growing up? What elementary school did you go to?
I went to Oak Forest Elementary and then Black Junior High School and Waltrip. And it was like Leave It to Beaver. So my parents, I never heard them ever raise their voices. And mother was like June Cleaver.
And which one were you?
So I was a lot of times Eddie. What was Eddie's?
Yeah,
yes, the bad one. Eddie Haskell. Yes, exactly.
I got that impression from earlier. You might
he's
be a
the
little
neighbor,
Eddie.
though. Yeah.
Well, I'm an original redhead. And so I always looked innocent, right? I always had that, the blue eyes and the red hair.
I just want our listeners to know that Larry has really blue eyes and white hair. But you used to be a redhead.
I did, until about 40, and it just changed. But yeah, it was awesome. I mean, my dad was home every day at 5 o'clock. He went into his den, and for 30 minutes, we weren't allowed to do anything, make noise, do nothing. He would come into, after 30 minutes of resting his eyes, is what mother called it, and we had dinner. And she was dressed, had pearls on, and just like Leave It to Beaver. It was unbelievable. So, it's almost impossible for me to have a normal relationship, right? Because of that is my image,
Now, is the house still there?
The house is still there. Mother died August 1st of 21, and my business partner, Frank York, sold it for me in November of that year, I believe.
Now, and you're in real estate, so things in Oak Forest and Garden Oaks is not lasting. Those original homes are far and few between,
My uncle built the house, and he built churches, and the house was built to stay. It had a 3-foot foundation. Mother said he would bring all the rebarb from all the jobs he had that was left over, and so she said this house is not going anywhere. So when Carla hit, Hurricane Carla, back in
61,
it didn't budge. It did not budge. And so it's still there. They added about 1,000 square foot to it and just gutted it. Absolutely gutted it.
Oh, so it's been lovingly restored in some areas in regards to, and that's so important for these post-World War II homes that had literally maybe 2 bedrooms, maybe 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, and this on the hallway. So they need to be updated in a way it'll maintain the charm of the home, but also keep it living a little bit longer.
It was 3, 1.5. Oh, we were living high. Yes.
Man, air conditioning?
Oh, you better believe it. Well, let me take that back. Window units.
Yeah.
We did
In the early
have
days.
a furnace that was from a church. I guess they took it out when they bought the house, but it was giant.
What churches did he work on here in Houston by chance?
You know, I went back and asked some of my cousins, and we couldn't come up with any answers.
But he was a contractor, or he was the developer.
He was the developer, Mr.
Okay.
McKinney. Yeah, he was
Wow.
the contractor developer. You got it.
Okay, so Waltrip High School, what do young people do back in the day over in Waltrip High School areas? I mean, you've got the main drag in that area too.
So
Garden Oaks Theater?
Garden Oaks Theater.
Yeah.
Every Saturday, Mother would drop us off, and me and a few of the neighbor kids
You went
would
to
watch
Sears?
shows. Oh, we went to Sears. I mean, you know,
Down the street?
you better believe it.
What do you remember seeing at Garden Oaks Theater?
Cartoons. I don't remember anything specific, but I don't know if y'all know this, but we had a country club.
Pine Forest.
Pine Forest Country Club.
This is a big
was
deal,
right
folks.
behind the Sears.
Yeah, and Harbin C. Moore was the architect for the actual country club itself, which was significant because he did a bunch of homes here. He's Barry Moore's father, and now it's an industrial office park space that's there. But yeah, the original Pine Forest Country Club that would later move out to Clay Road on the west side of Houston was actually right there. And people don't realize, and that's because it was way out there, it was way out, country club living. This is back in the 30s, folks.
Yeah, it was a great place to grow up. It was safe. We played hide and seek until after dark. But when I heard Lary Barton come home, I knew it was time to come home. But if I heard Lary Dwayne Barton, it meant that she was already walking down the driveway coming to get me.
Oh, man. What's important to note, too, if you're looking you up on social media or just Googling you, tell them how to spell Larry.
Lary.
One R.
Rhymes with Gary.
My brother, who's my late brother, was Gary.
Yeah.
And I think I told you all the story earlier, but Mother told me just before she died that was actually a mistake. It wasn't to rhyme with my brother's name or to match. I got so used to spelling Gary that when I came along, they just spelled me Lary.
I think that's sweet. I think that's
But it's
sweet.
unique and it makes you special.
Well,
so.
I think I already got that one without the name.
Oh, that's true. Well, then you know who your friends are.
I can just picture your mom calling your name too. I remember I played like that, and we didn't even have to come home when it was dark. We had to come home when we were called, and I can remember my mother going, Heidi. You know, everyone in the neighborhood could hear it.
Can you remember your phone number?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Can you?
713-686-6613.
Well, when I remember mine, it didn't have an area code
no
on
area
it.
code.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
The JA, so the different,
Exactly.
Did you ever have one of those?
yes. I
That's
cannot remember what it was.
That's really dating
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I mean, because
Oh,
that's
yeah. Call National 29000. Yeah.
fascinating.
That's funny. Yeah.
The olden days.
Did you grow up here?
I did
Heidi?
not.
No. Okay.
I did not.
Mr. McKinney?
Yeah, born and raised. Yeah, so remember first home address too. All those things that you had to remember because if you ever got lost or you need to find a payphone, you had to know this kind of thing. So you call a house. Yeah.
Oh, I remember knowing my parents' name in case I ever ended up in a police station. You know, because the little kids, we were loose. You know, we were out doing stuff. If you didn't hear someone going, Heidi, you could be anywhere, right? Just doing your own thing.
Well, I think we talked about that too. I have a friend that their mom was always like adamant. You have to always have clean underwear.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, you better believe it.
If you have an accident, someone's going to check your underwear.
No, but if you get in a car accident or something happens to you, the paramedics are going to cut your clothing
They're from
off
a terrible family. Look at that underwear.
Like, no, we're going to let him die. His underwear are dirty and they're old.
But that's exactly why those moms had so much pride in everything they did. They kept that house, and no son or daughter of theirs would be caught, dead. In some cases.
Ooh, we're taking an interesting turn here.
We were talking about growing up in Garden Oaks, right?
Yeah.
So my grandparents lived around the corner.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
literally
common.
around the
Yeah,
corner.
yeah.
So the first time I ran away, actually, I think the only time, I took my wagon,
Yeah,
a little
sure.
red
flyer.
red flyer,
Red radio
wagon,
flyer, yeah.
and put all my toys in it. Mm-hmm. No clothes, nothing else,
Oh,
just
yeah.
toys, and
Yeah.
went around to my grandparents.
Yeah.
So I knocked on the door, and I must have been maybe 5 or 6. And I remember my grandfather going in the other room to call my parents. I didn't know it, but my grandmother acted like, "Oh, come on in, honey. Are you here?
You
for
can live
Mom?
with us
yeah,
now."
You still without, And I'm going, "Oh, this is great, right?" And my parents come around the corner going, "What? What's going on? Where have you been?"
I remember there was a house in the neighborhood, and all you had to do was knock on the door. I think we literally said, "I want candy," and they would just give it to us. And I was eating some candy, and my parents told me, they're like, "Where'd you get that candy?" And I'm like, "Oh," and they said, "You just knock on the door and they give you candy?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Don't go there anymore."
Yeah, no, not good, not good. You're talking of candy. My mother was a candy striper at
the hospitals.
Memorial Northwest Hospital for over 20 years after my father died. She'd always wanted to do it, but she was a wife, right? And she was there for my father all the time.
Did they have the outfits back then?
Oh, they did.
Oh,
they
yeah,
had
they
the little
did.
vest.
I know they did then.
That's
but
where they got the name. Yeah.
Exactly. But when your mom came back to do it, did they still have the outfits? That
They
fit?
had red outfits,
Okay,
right?
okay.
So when she was in the hospital, they had a candy striper on your name outside your room, and you got special treatment. But she was known as the candy lady. She worked in the gift shop. And so everybody that came in, all the nurses, etc., would go in and buy 4 or 5 pieces of candy. And whatever they bought, she would add 2 or 3 pieces to it and pay for it out of her pocket. And so she became known as the candy lady.
So if you were a candy striper and you happened to go in the hospital, there would be something special on your door. It's like a little VIP club.
What was her name?
Joyce Barton. Dorothy Joyce Barton was her full name.
So it would have that on the label.
It would have that and a little candy striper vest.
Logo or something. Yeah.
No.
No, the vest, the actual vest,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, so you've gone through some great memories here. Now take us on the journey of your professional career, because 41 years in IT. Tell listeners how you got that job and how it all started.
So I hired an agency to find me a job, and they called me down to 2310 Austin Street, Audiovisual Services, owned by the Weishart and Paget family. And I went in to interview, and it took 3 hours, the first interview, and I think there were 3 more interviews, and each one were at least 3 hours, and it went great. As I told you earlier, when I drove up in front, I saw a Rolls Royce parked underneath the covered parking. And I said, somebody here knows how to make money. I think I really want to work here. So I got home, I told my dad, I said, they offered me a job. And he said, nope, you need to go have one more interview. You can't just take the first interview. So I interviewed with a savings and loan. This is back in 1980. If you
Before the bust, yeah.
Exactly. So they had a car and $12,000 a year. But audiovisual services was $14,000 a year. And my father said, you pick. So thank God I picked audiovisual services.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I started as a credit manager. I walked in and I said, who do I manage? And they said, you see that 12-foot tall stack of invoices? You need to collect those. And that's how it started.
But now, what did you learn from that job?
Oh, my goodness gracious. I learned exactly how operations works. I learned that, a lot of the mistakes on invoices start with the salesperson or the person that originated the invoice. Let's put it that way. So when they came to me and they said, look, we're moving our offices to San Francisco and you need to go into sales, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be a salesperson. Everybody there wore polyester suits, had big flashy cars, and wore lots of gold jewelry. And I thought, that's not who I want to be, right? They were all wonderful, wonderful people. And I remember so many great experiences. But I went home to my dad, and my dad said, yeah. He said, you're a natural. Go be in sales. You're a natural.
Yeah.
So I took Gene Bartholomew, who was one of my best mentors ever. I love Gene and Cindy to this day. They're awesome. But I took Gene out to lunch. I had about $8 in my pocket. And Gene, we went to a nice restaurant, and I thought, Lord, I hope he pays. I hope. He always did. And I asked him, and he just said, you'd be crazy not to go into sales. So I went into sales. That was 1986, I believe. I went out and bought a little 190 Mercedes. So not too flashy, but a Mercedes instead of a big town car.
It looked the part.
And I went to Joseph Banks, I believe, or Foley's to buy a suit.
And I'm going to guess it was not polyester.
It was not polyester. No, it had a little wool in it, right? And cotton.
Just what you need in Houston.
Yeah.
A little wool in your suit.
It's like Faya Seraphim. He wore a 3-piece suit every day of his life, apparently. This is what he did.
It makes an impression.
Daddy always said, you get treated the way you dress.
I believe that. I really do. And I just like our listeners to know that he's wearing a lovely blue button-down shirt with a very spiffy jacket and a pocket square.
Thank you, Michael Wiesenthal.
Yeah. Well, and you shopped at Harold's in the Heights, too. The iconic Harold's in the Heights. Talk about that, because actually you had a really cool experience, courtesy of Michael Wiesenthal.
Well, I walked in and Michael saw the way I was dressed, and I think he shook his head and thought, no, we need to help this fellow. We need to help him. So he dressed me for 40 years. He would actually come to my home and weed out things that I should not wear anymore. And he would almost, what did they call it, Geranimal? Where they would match this tie will go with this. And it was like
Sears, yes. If you get all the tigers, they go together.
There you go.
No matter what you're wearing.
So Michael would match things up, and actually write notes. It was great, but it always meant I had to buy more clothes.
Of course.
One of the times I went in, I was outside the store, and I saw these gentlemen in black suits and with earphones, and I thought, something's going on. But I went in, the store was open, and Michael said, hey, great day for you to be here. Go in the back. So I went in the back, started looking at suits. He got me in a few minutes, and he took me up to where the Hickey Freeman suits were.
I know those. Yeah.
And there was President George Bush standing there. Tall. I mean, I'm 5'8.5", maybe 5'9", and I never feel short until you see somebody that's really tall. Walked in, and Michael is just the consummate professional. He's the consummate salesperson. He is just the best person, one of the best people I know. And he said, President Bush, have you had the pleasure of meeting Lary Barton? And I was just dumbfounded that, number one, I was meeting the president. Number two, that Michael had introduced us that way. But that's beautiful. I know you know Michael.
Yes.
And that's just who he is.
Exactly.
Yes, he's always putting himself in the back. He always puts everybody else first.
Wow.
That's a sweet story.
That's a great story.
So did you buy the Hickey Freeman?
I went back in the back room where my cheap suits were, but they weren't even cheap then. I mean, I would think they were now, but he dressed me beautifully, just beautifully, and made sure I always had all the right things.
And still does to this day, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
My mom actually shopped there as well, and she liked St. John outfits.
Oh,
and
good for her.
I think it was Ruthie. I think Ruthie was the woman's name. She was the sales clerk. And I think it was Michael's cousin, aunt, somebody. I believe they were related. And she would dress my mom. In fact, when my father died, I remember just calling Ruthie on the phone and saying 3 pieces of black, St. John. Just pick them out.
Her size, everything. Yeah.
She was great.
The young people, they just don't understand this. They're buying everything on Amazon or wherever from online, and they don't like it, and they drive it over to the thing and send the box back or whatever. And they just don't understand service, which makes me sad. It's a huge part of my art gallery. It's like I will greet you by your name, and if I don't know your name, I'm going to say, welcome back, please remind me your name, and I won't make that mistake again. And, I hope that there will always be a place where we can get good service, but it is something that it just kills me. We had a guest on, and Mr. McKinney said, give us your email address, and he said, I'd rather give you my phone number because we like to talk to people on the phone.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Michael Wiesenthal arranged for us our Connectors group, which Mr. McKinney came and spoke at, which was awesome. And we went to Brennan's, and Alex Brennan came in and talked to us about his book, and he talked to us about finding what your brand is. What is your brand? And their brand is come here for an experience.
Yeah.
Because when you go to Brennan's, you don't just say, hey, let's pop down to Brennan's, right? It's an experience.
You're having a birthday. Yeah.
Yes,
you're
exactly.
Having a thing, yeah.
And 25-cent martinis during the week, by the way.
What?
Yes,
Really?
exactly. Yes,
What?
they do.
What,
You
in-
buy an appetizer, I believe it is 25-cent martinis.
Oh, I'm going to start going there. I didn't know that.
But is there actual vodka?
For me, it's going to be gin.
For me, it's going to be gin, too.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
gonna
like, really?
Yeah.
You hear that first, you hear stuff like that.
So, but Alex talked to us for
breaking
an hour.
news. Breaking news on we're not really here for breaking news, but that one is worth it.
But he's awesome, and the book was fantastic. But it's about building your brand.
Yeah.
But since I'm in real estate now, I'm doing a lot of social media, and I work with a fella out in California, Eric Erickson, who's just absolutely awesome. And he takes my horrible videos and makes them look great. But what he told me was, he goes, "You live your brand."
Yeah.
He said, "You're going to be known as the inspirational realtor, and we're never going to say it." He said, "We don't need to."
Right.
He said, "Everything on your Facebook, everything on your LinkedIn, everything on your Instagram is all uplifting." And he goes, "We don't have to mention to anybody." He says, "You're just a ray of sunshine." And I thought, man, that's awesome.
the thing about social media, people are really quick to be critical of it. But before I got into this business a long time ago, my professional background was in public relations, and it really does matter a lot. I have 8 different social media channels for various things, mostly my art gallery, but other things as well. And I'm amazed at people who I had no clue were even on social media who will tell me, I look at every single thing you post. And if you look on the analytics, I don't know if this is only for business page, but like on Instagram, you may have something that gets 100 likes, and then you click on the analytics and it's had 10,000 views. And most of ours are having things in the thousands of views and the hundreds of likes. And it's like people are looking a lot more than you realize.
Yes.
And it really does matter. I think it's really worth doing, and we're always positive too. And I think it's really important to have some nice positive stuff out there for people to look at. And
If you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk. You need to be reflected in exactly what's on Facebook. It needs to be who you are.
yeah, well, and we have, like, one of the pages I have is we are the exclusive dealers of those real iconic photos of Selena, the Tejano superstar.
Yes.
John Dyer took those. He's gotten 3 solo museum shows based on that work. We've sold that work to the National Portrait Gallery. It's shown here at the Museum of Fine Arts. And that's a page people probably wouldn't realize that I'm managing. But, we're talking to Selena fans all over the world. They're not just in Texas. Boy, the reach of this stuff is pretty amazing.
And we truly are global.
We truly are.
Yeah. I mean, the internet has done so much to bring the world and make it a lot smaller place. Good news and bad news, right?
For sure.
Yes,
Well, it's good to
exactly.
be the one putting the good news out there.
Always.
So can we get back to that? You mentioned something about a Rolls Royce.
Talk about
my
it.
gosh. Brown, it was a beautiful brown 4-door Rolls Royce, and Tom Weishart drove it. But when he got into the mortgage business, he thought it was a little flashy, so he sold it. And I had met Martha Turner now it'd be 44 years ago through Tom Weishart and Jim Hazen, and they had built some townhouses along Bissonnette and Institute, and Martha and Nancy were selling them. So when Tom said he'd sold it to Martha Turner, I thought, well, that's fantastic. That's, she's a class act. She goes
Very
perfectly with a
classy
Rolls
lady,
Royce. So recently, within the last couple of years, Martha passed away. In fact, I think we just celebrated the anniversary anniversary.
What happened to the Rolls Royce?
So Martha,
When she passed away?
she drove it. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I
Like,
do not know.
Where is it now? Okay, listeners out there, if you're listening right now to the show and you know what happened to Martha Turner's Rolls Royce, brown Rolls Royce, you said?
Brown, yes.
Okay, so there it is.
Her daughter, Dessa Turner, is a friend of my gallery and a friend of the show.
An artist, yeah.
Yeah, she's a beautiful woman.
She's gorgeous.
Beautiful woman.
She's
yes.
Great
gorgeous.
energy, too. So now there's also something fun about this because we talked in the room, too. Tell listeners what Martha Turner did with this. She picked somebody up, right?
So the story I was told by Jim Hazen was, number one, he sent me the photo of her in the Rolls Royce on the car phone, right? Which we used at her memorial service, which was awesome, right? The story I heard was that she drove up in front of a client's home in River Oaks, and the woman got in the car, and Martha said very proudly, "Have you ever been in a Rolls Royce before?" And the woman said, "Well, never in the front seat."
Wow.
So, but Martha was very proud of that car. You would actually see her down at Galveston. I know she had a place down there, and you'd see her at Galveston. And of course, a Rolls Royce at Galveston.
That's out of place.
It's going to really stand out.
Exactly. She looked like a Rolls Royce. A little girl from Hemp Hill, Texas, but she looked like a Rolls Royce.
Classy
Yeah,
lady.
She total
Absolutely,
class.
with the pearls and everything. And now you actually work.
I do.
At Martha Turner. Talk about what you do in real estate.
Well, I got very fortunate. And when I was about to retire, in fact, I actually did a podcast on this with Elite Publishing. And I went to my shrink and I said, "Hey, it's time to retire, and I'm not having a good time anymore." And he said, "Well, 41 years is a long time." He goes, "But you need 15 months to plan your retirement." I said, "Really?" So I went home that day, and the phone rang. And it was a dear friend, Beth Sanders Moore. And she said, "Guess what I did today?" I said, "I don't know." She goes, "I got my real estate license." "How'd you do that?" "Aceable agent." "How long did it take?" I said, "Okay, that's great." I called the shrink and said, "Guess what? I'm going to take my real estate license." And my mom was still alive. And I remember her saying to me, "I haven't seen you smile in 2 years.
Oh.
Whatever you're doing, let's hope it's legal, but whatever you're doing, just keep doing it because you're smiling again." So Alan York, dear friend of mine, married Frank York, and Frank was at Martha Turner. And so I called him and I said, "Frank, are you having a good time?" He goes, "Oh, I love it." I said, "Well, I'm thinking about getting my license. Let's be partners." And I said, "Really? You're serious?" He goes, "Yeah."
Taking on a newbie like that. Okay.
A total newbie, right?
Yeah.
And Frank is 40. I'm not. Frank is Hispanic. I'm not. And we have the best time. Everything is a pleasure. He's so smart. He's got financial sense. He's got all the things that I don't, right? And so we know each other's strengths. We know each other's weaknesses. And we play off each other so well.
I love that.
He's a great guy. And it's been 3 years now. And I think a lot of people are surprised in the industry because relationships don't last that long. Partnerships don't. But it gets stronger and stronger all the time. Frank, you're awesome. If you're listening to this, you're awesome.
Is Kyle Santolini still with Martha Turner?
I don't know that name.
Okay, because we had the pleasure with the Houston History Bus when we first launched this. It was actually Chicago Title Company who sponsored these different courses that we did. We did 6 of them total, and Chicago Title Company sponsored them to where realtors from Martha Turner could jump on board the bus, and they could ride around and learn about just different neighborhoods of Houston's history as we're riding around, and it was just so kind of them to do that. And I remember, well, you remember 2 things. One, you remember getting a check for 6 projects at one time is always a very nice boost in regards to us being able to get things done with the bus. It was again the start of the bus, so I'm like, I want to get new tires, I want to get new this and that, new seats. So just getting that was very kind of them. But we would pick up right there from your office in the Post Oak / Memorial Park area and take you around town, bring you right back, and it was just very fun. So it might have been before you were there, but yeah, it was just a lot of fun. So I always remember Martha Turner and of course Chicago Title Company for doing that for the realtors there.
Well, Martha may be gone, but her presence and the way she ran the company and her beliefs are still there. And it starts off with God, right? And that's a wonderful place to work. Everybody's friendly. Everybody's nice. There's nothing but positivity in that office. And
She
everybody's
mentored
very
so
supportive.
many people.
She
mentored
did.
so many people.
Very much so. It's a very small world. Marilyn Thompson, who was the president for a long time, is my neighbor's sister, Dr. Robert Bloss and Linda Bloss. They're my neighbors. Well, Marilyn is Linda's sister. They happen to grow up at 3232 Avalon, which is my dear friend Ken Bohan and Dean O'Kelly's house. So after 5 years, I finally got both those folks together, right? Linda, Marilyn, Bob, all together to go over to Ken and Dean's house and take a tour.
Oh.
In Linda and Marilyn's bedroom was some work, I think they said Pierre from Paris, that her mother brought in to do some iron work on the closet doors. It was still there. And I know Ken and Dean worked with a decorator on their home, Ed Harris, Harris and Sanders, and he must have liked it because it was still there. And I think they both got a little weepy. Look at the memories.
And now the homeowners have a story behind it. Now they learn about, that's so cool.
Well, their dad, before he passed away, actually stopped by and to see the house. And he told him, I think Linda tells the story, that the carport was built for a hurricane, that it's not going in. The house would move before the carport did. He was an engineer.
Forest house, nonstop.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Larry, let people know where they can get a hold of you, your social media handles, maybe an email address or LinkedIn or whatever. How can they get a hold of you if they want to learn about what you do in regards to the organizations you connect people with, or just have a realtor?
Number one, let me throw in a plug for Heart Gift. Just joined the board of Heart Gift, and we help children that are born with holes in their hearts have those holes fixed by doctors. It's about $25,000 per operation. So it's a great organization, heartgift.org.
It is a great organization. My younger brother Reagan had a hole in his heart when he was a baby, and those surgeries matter. You can go on to live a great, productive life, but it's important the work they do over at Heart Gift. So now, how can they get a hold of you, though, Larry?
Well, number one, my email is larry1r.barton@sotheby's.realty. Instagram is Lary Barton Realtor, all one word, Larry with one R. Facebook is Larry D. Barton for business and Lary Barton for personal.
And they can also call you where?
713-516-0221.
Thank you again, Larry, for joining us on the Houston Hour of Mr. McKinney and Heidi Vaughn. We're going to hand it over. Take care, Houston.